Well, we've got some big college football playoff news. The Big 12 is getting a win out of it, but at what cost? Is there a catch here? That's the question that we need to ask about the latest update from the college football playoff, which, of course, is being dictated all by the Big 10 and the SEC. Big 12 basketball, quite a weekend. Big 12 hoops right now is what SEC football thinks it is. We're going to talk about that and all the national championship potential that this league has this year on the hardwood. And in what will be a bit of a shorter show tonight, starting later, there was the NFC championship game I wanted to let finish up before everybody files in here. Let me be a bit self-indulgent because I know this is a Big 12 wide channel. You guys know I'm a K-State guy. K-State's got a Jerome Tang problem right now, and it's a pretty big deal to K-State at least. I'm going to be self-indulgent and talk about that for the K-State faction of my audience. I'll stick it at the end of the show, though. Okay, so there you go. Welcome in. This is the Open for Business Big 12 podcast. I'm your host, John Kurtz. This is where the Big 12 just means more. Thank you all for joining me. Please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate everybody who is here, like Pacific Northwest Ute taking his seat. Good to see you, Bracket Cat, Paulie, K-State Welder. I thought I saw Fong Wei. Yep, Fong Wei. It should be a good, fun, quick show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Lots of ways you can help support the channel. Obviously, keep loading up the chat. That helps. I appreciate everybody that's there. You can submit a super chat by clicking the $ below the chat box. If you would like, if you are so inclined to support the channel that way, it will also guarantee that your question or comment makes it on the show tonight. And you can hit me up on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4. If you're not watching live, you want to submit a super chat there. I will kick off the next show with it if you do. Totally free to subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter as well. It's ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com to subscribe to that. And I would highly encourage you to. We're getting up to close to 6,000 subscribers. It is totally free. It's in your inbox twice a week for free. Also, if you want my takes on the national college football scene, you can find the link to OFB College Football in the description of this video. But let's get rolling. Kim, good to see you. SW 1989, good to see you. All right. College football playoff. The Big 12 just got a playoff spot locked in for next year. We are 8 months before the season even starts. The Big 12 will be in the college football playoff next year. That in and of itself is a win. That is not guaranteed every single year. Remember 2 years ago, there was talk that it wouldn't happen. But here's the scary thing and perhaps the catch. This could be a warning sign of trouble on the horizon, trouble of big change and things to come, because the Big 10 and the SEC are still locked in a real power struggle. So is this stalemate and decision that we got actually good for the Big 12, or are we kind of delaying the inevitable here? That's what I'm going to answer in this video for you. Okay. So we hit the deadline for the college football playoff to expand. That is the newsworthiness here. It was January 23rd. And of course, nothing happened. We got an official announcement from the playoff. It is not going to change this year, not expanding to 16, not expanding to 24. It's just going to stay a 12-team playoff for next season, which, taking away all the Big 12 implications from it, it's a pretty sensical thing to have happen, right? We've only had 2 of these. Why do we need to rush to change it? If you're just thinking about generalities here, it seems to be going pretty well. People enjoyed the playoff. That Indiana-Miami national championship game was one of the highest rated of the college football playoff era. Things seem to be going pretty fine. But this was not a decision that was come to because everybody was like, oh, hey, this is great. We're making a lot of money. We don't need more money. Everything's awesome. No, this is a decision that happened because everybody wants more and more and more, and they can't agree how to do it. So we'll just stick with this for right now. Okay. Here's the reporting from ESPN. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey has publicly supported a 16-team model. But Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti would agree to that only if Sankey committed to a 24-team field after 3 years. Okay, so Tony Petitti was like, all right, Sankey, you want a 16-team playoff. You want a 5+11, which was originally suggested by Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips. You want that? Then you got to commit to go to 24 in 3 years. And Sankey said No thanks. Multiple sources, according to ESPN, said that's not something Sankey was ready to do at this time, although there has been significant support for a 16-team field. Staying at 12 was expected because of the stalemate that has existed for months between the Big Ten and the SEC. Yeah, we're going on months here where there's been a real disagreement between these two. And I think the results on the field probably drove even more of a wedge between these two because the Big Ten just won a third straight national championship. The SEC failed to even make the title game for a third straight year. Why is the Big Ten going to give up any leverage right now? I mean, Tony Petitti and basically anybody that's been leading the Big Ten over the past decade, they're pretty ruthless. They're not going to right now give in and say, hey, SEC, we'll cave to you because you guys run this thing right now. That's not how it's going. The Big Ten runs this. Like, this is the Big Ten's world. Everybody else is just living in it, man. They're even getting their bottom feeders to win national championships right now. Meanwhile, the SEC is, I think, a bit perturbed that they had to go to 9 conference games. That just happened. They're not winning the way that they want to. I feel like there's a lot of consternation there. Well, the SEC still tries to dig in and believe that they are the best in the sport, right? This is the league that just argued for its commissioner said they should get 7 spots in the playoff. They spent the entire last season laying out new metrics, presenting PowerPoints, all these different things on how to get better treatment from the playoff selection committee. So those are the two sides that you have going at it right now. And when the status quo is still good, even though everybody wants better, well, the status quo is still good. It makes a ton of sense that we just got here where it's a stalemate and nothing's happening. But is this a good thing for the Big 12? Is this a blessing? Is it calm before the storm? That's what we're seeking to answer here. Because if you're the Big 12, you certainly want guaranteed playoff access. That's a very important thing. But what you really want, you want as much guaranteed access as possible without having to sign on the dotted line that you are less than the Big 10 or the SEC. That's been the perspective of the Big 12 this whole time. We're not going to sign on for 4-4-2-2 because that would give 4 auto bids to the SEC and Big 10 and only 2 for us. And that means that it's just written into law, codified. We are lesser than those two as a conference. So if you're the Big 12, you like the Big 10 coming out with its 2014 proposal saying, hey, fine, what about this? 4 auto bids for everybody. That sounds good. That sounds good for the Big 12. That does not seem to be what the SEC wants to do. It also does not seem to be very popular at all with public opinion for whatever impact that has. And here we are. So if you're the Big 12, you're sitting here like, well, if the choice was going to 16 with the 4-4-2-2 model versus staying put, or maybe we wind up getting 4 auto bids at one point. Right now, you're like, look, staying put doesn't look that bad. It certainly is better than 4-4-2-2. You can't sign your life away and admit you are a tier below. Now, the Big 12 has been very supportive. Brett Yormark has of this 5+11 plan, which, I'll get to more on this in a moment, but I think the fact that we did not go to that this year is a win for the Big 12, regardless of whether or not they're supporting it. That seemed to be a means to an end to avoid 4-4-2-2. Because 5+11 would just simply increase the amount of teams from the Big 10 or the SEC in. They're going to further lap you in terms of how many teams are getting into the field. So I think for right now, that's actually a minor win for the Big 12. But I haven't even gotten to the major win of the Big 12. Okay. The major win for the Big 12 is that a part of this has been, along with the reporting, is that every single Power 4 team, or conference rather, every Power 4 conference will get its conference champion into the field, which is a change, right? It used to be that it was the highest ranked conference champions, right? The 5 highest ranked conference champions. So that meant that you could have 2 G5 conference champs as did happen this year to keep the ACC champion out. You can have that scenario play out, and the Big 12 could theoretically not have someone in the playoff. 2 years ago with Arizona State, there was talk at one point that Tulane and Army could be the 2 teams, and you wouldn't have gotten a Big 12 team in the field. That is no longer the case. It is now the 4 highest ranked Power 4 champion, or I'm screwing this up for you guys. I'm sorry. What it says now is the ACC, SEC, Big Ten, and Big 12 champ will all get into the college football playoff. That's a tweak for this year, even though it's not expanding to 16 teams. Okay, full stop. You will also get the highest ranked group of 5 team in there. And of course, we have the Notre Dame rule. If they're in the top 12, it's been widely reported, complained about, they will be in there as well. But I think the bigger picture implications here about what's going on with the Big Ten and the SEC are what really matters, because that's a short-term win for the Big 12. Next year, that's great, but it's probably only staying at 12 for another year. I guess we'll see, though, because the Big Ten and the SEC are going to have to figure something out. They're going to have to stop butting heads and actually put some kind of plan together with each other if that is going to change. But I would guess that it still is going to. So what does this mean? What should Big 12 fans think of the fight right now between the Big Ten and the SEC? Real quick, please do subscribe to the channel, like the video, all of that, totally free. Great way to support. Here's what I think Big 12 fans should be paying attention to is where does this go? Like what is going to happen? What are the threats of the Big Ten and SEC feuding? I mean, for right now, I think the fact that you're just not getting a unified push toward the 4-4-2-2 plan is the biggest win that the Big 12 has had of these two not working together. And it seemed to me like it was almost a coordinated ploy from the Big 12 and the ACC at one point to say, let's push this 5+11 idea. We can get the SEC behind it. And that's going to take away us having to write down on a sheet of paper, like sign it, that we are lesser than those conferences. So that seemed huge. You threw the poison pill out there. Big Ten starts thinking, well, screw these guys. If they don't want to go along with this, we'll think even bigger. Let's go to a 24-team playoff. And the SEC digs in and says, no, we don't need to go that far. We don't need to mess up the calendar. We don't need to mess up the regular season. Let's take 16, throw it out there for some more bids for the highest ranked teams to get in by the committee. We'll be just fine. There are some nuclear options on the table here if these guys really can't ever agree on anything. And I would again repeat, I think the dynamics of this have changed even since a couple months ago when they started to become at odds, because the Big Ten won again and the SEC is now back on its heels, digging in. Well, the Big Ten is saying we have no reason to back off what we want because we are the big dogs right now. This could get explosive. What are the nuclear options? Well, one of the nuclear options is the SEC just taking its ball and going home, which is a part of the reporting here that the SEC has said. This was in a CBS Sports story where it was, there is, of course, always the threat of the SEC having its own playoff, which I know sounds crazy, but this is in line with like Ross Dellinger's reporting from last week or 2 weeks ago that we talked about, where he had said, yeah, the SEC might just want to go into a silo play itself because they can control the rules there. That was the story that was about the differing rules, who's trying to circumvent the cap, should there even be a cap. And it was, hey, if you're just in your own conference, you can set the rules, whereas it's harder when you're out there with everybody. SEC only playoff seems crazy, somewhat untenable to me. People would want to watch an SEC playoff, but like if it's not SEC and Big Ten, doesn't that sort of defeat the purpose, especially at a time like right now? How serious is that threat when the Big Ten's won 3 straight national championships? But I am just passing along from the reporting that is still out there, that's a threat for the SEC right now. If that were to happen, how does that change things? How does that, I mean, could be a whole host of ramifications for that for the Big 12 if everybody just goes into their own silo to just play their own conference, and then it's back to someone. Are we just voting? The AP votes on a national championship at that point, on a national champion at that point. I don't know. I don't really know how that works, and obviously, I think that would have to be down the road after the current college football playoff agreement is done. But these are things to be thinking about right now, and the things to be monitoring if you're a Big 12 fan. So, like in the short term, I feel like a lot of this is good, but I will admit I'm a bit uneasy about, okay, so what does it really mean if these two are not going to be able to get along? I think short-term good, because they were really moving in unified fashion, in unison, away from anything that seemed good for the overall health of the sport, and certainly anything that seemed good for the Big 12 or the ACC. They were able to stop that with Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips a bit. But now, how dug in will these two sides get? What kind of damage can they do if they're angry with each other? And they're going to be like, the big deer or whatever, charging each other with the antlers. Like, what collateral damage can come from that? I don't know. So short term, again, to recap here, if the playoff were to jump to 16 next year, you can say, hey, BYU would have been in this year if that were the case. Maybe. I know they were technically the second team left out of the playoff, so people would say, hey, yeah, literally, John, that would be the case. What happens if they're deciding playoff spots with positions number 13 and 14 in the rankings? Does that change how they do that, how they rank teams? They showed that they would jerk around Notre Dame. What would keep them from doing that to the Big 12 and BYU? All of a sudden, is Texas, after its win over Texas A&M, just vaulted above the Cougars if it actually means a playoff spot? I think it's easier to leave BYU in that spot when, and actually I was saying 13 or 14. You guys know what I mean. The first two spots out of the field. That was 11 and 12, right, for Notre Dame and BYU. I think you catch my drift of what I'm saying. Those were not indicative of playoff spots, so it's easy to just stick BYU there and like, okay, we'll be fair. But if it's actually coming down to like who's getting in the field, that's when I would become more worried that a Texas or somebody like that pops up, right? So I still would tend to say just keep it at 12 teams, probably best case for the Big 12, because if it goes to 16, it's just going to load up on more SEC or Big 10 schools. They'll have even more chances, even more lotto tickets there. The disparity between the amount of teams in from each conference will look different, and it will look worse for the Big 12's sake. So I actually don't really think it's that bad. And of course, you get the guarantee. So that's at least something we can take some solace in Big 12 country for now. But this can all change on a dime. You can never really trust Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, what's going on right now as far as, how it's going to relate to the rest of the college football world. So these are two really powerful guys. These are two really powerful conferences. These are huge, huge decisions being made for the future of everybody. I'm going to quote my guy, Greg Flugar from Peek Around the Corner, which you should be checking out his channel all the time right now. But keep your head on a swivel is what I would say about that. Now, could the SEC or Big Ten actually break away? I know I bring that up. Could it actually happen? Could they break away and do their own thing? Click this video to find out how that could work. If you're watching live, just ignore that. That's for the clipped folks who are watching this. Now, I got a request recently. I feel like that was a week or two ago. Why aren't you talking more Big 12 basketball? Well, the rest of the show is going to be Big 12 basketball. So for those who were yearning for that, this is for you, my friends. I will get to the Jerome Tang conundrum that K-State is in. I want to talk the overall state of the conference right now, which seems to be about as healthy as ever, certainly at the top. And to me, it draws comps to both the SEC and the Big Ten. But let's chat with Pacific Northwest U real quick. If you want to submit a super chat like Pacific Northwest U, click the $ below the chat box. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. That is totally free, as is subscribing to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com. To do that, ofbnews.com. Pacific Northwest Ute says, wait a second. I thought if there had been 16 teams this year, BYU, Vandy, and maybe Utah might have been in and might be the case next year. All right, well, I guess I am looking at this a bit more cynically than you are. I don't think Utah, because Utah finished 15th, right? And there were two teams from outside of the top, like 12, 15, whatever, that got into the playoff because you had two G5 teams with Tulane and James Madison. So Utah would not have been in, if we're going technically by what the rankings say, they would not have been in. And the point that I was making was I'm just being cynical here and saying that it's easy enough for the committee to say, hey, yeah, BYU, we'll keep them at 12 after that Big 12 championship game loss right now, because we know that's not a consequential spot. We can do that and make it seem like we're not being too hard on the Big 12. But if that were a spot that was getting you into the playoff and you're feeling the heat from Greg Sankey in SEC land, about Vandy, about Texas. Do you actually keep BYU there, or suddenly do the Cougars fall back a couple of spots? Would that make a difference at the end of the day? Remember, we have seen TCU go from 3-6 after winning by 50 points to get left out of the playoff when a playoff spot was on the line. So that is where my perhaps too much cynicism comes in. I would just say that I come by it honestly, based on what we have seen with the treatment of the Big 12 over the years from the college football playoff. So if you're going to be more optimistic than Pacific Northwest Youth than me and say, hey, that might be the case next year, okay. I mean, BYU has Notre Dame on the schedule. There's a better chance that you can earn an at-large bid if you have Notre Dame on your schedule than if you don't. I think that much is very true. And Texas Tech, we've talked about the schedule. It certainly looks like they've got a red carpet, at least as of right now, to make it back to the Big 12 championship game and win it and be the team that takes that home. So if you want to say BYU and Tech should be right there again, and maybe if a Houston jumps up, if a Utah jumps up again, whoever it might be, Arizona State, who do you like? Arizona? Maybe. I just am inclined to always think the Big Ten and the SEC are going to benefit far, far more from this. At worst, I think it's a net neutral if it's staying at 12 as opposed to going to 16 for the Big 12's sake, Pacific Northwest Youth. That's kind of where I'm at on it. Reasonable minds can disagree. And I hope the Big 12 proves me wrong. I hope it's another year where the Big 12 has 3 teams in the top 15. And you'd be looking at me like an idiot at the end of the year, like, John, this could have been great. It could have been 2 or 3 Big 12 teams actually in there. We'll never know how the committee would have ultimately actually treated them, right? Because we won't get that opportunity next year to see how a 16-team field would go with 11 at-large bids. But it's a good comment, Pacific Northwest Youth. I understand where you're coming from there. Okay, so Big 12 basketball is what SEC football thinks it is. Right now, the Big 12 is nuts. It's insane at the top. And it really feels like SEC basketball in its heyday or Big 10 football right now. That's what Big 12 hoops feels like. And I think this will be the year. I tell you why. I think this will be the year that the Big 12 reclaims its rightful throne atop the sport by the time it's all said and done, and should have a national champion. I think we saw all of that on display on Saturday. That's part of the reason why I talk about it here. I mean, it was a great Saturday of hoops for Big 12 basketball. Now, those of you that already watched my instant reaction video to AJ DeBonsa going for 43, because I happened to just sit down and watch basically that entire game and was just captivated by him. You heard some of this, but I mean, that's your number one bullet point from an individual performance standpoint. All due respect to Kingston Flemings, who had 42 points on the road at Texas Tech. I do agree that that's a more impressive feat than 43 at home against Utah, but Kingston Flemings was in a losing effort. Okay. AJ DeBonsa did it in a winning effort at home in a rivalry game. And DeBonsa just, I mean, the way he looks, I know Alex Jensen called him a generational talent after the game. That is what he looks like when he's on like that. Playing bully ball, throwing down monster jams, and then hitting the threes that are leading to monster jams because guys then have to close out too hard on him. He had the full package going. It was as fun a performance as I can remember watching from a college hooper. It just, that burst that he went on in the second half. Like, I think that's about as good as you're ever going to see from a college basketball player in a burst like that. But man, I mean, the Tech Houston game was awesome. Those are 2 teams. You can't watch that game and tell me those are not 2 national championship contending basketball teams. Houston speaks for itself. They played for the title last year. Still makes me sick that they did not win the national championship last year, but they played for a title last year, brought so much of that roster back. They'd won 16 straight road games before that, but Texas Tech has, at this point, arguably the best home court advantage in college basketball and or the Big 12 right now. Like, I know about Allen Fieldhouse, and I saw the comeback against TCU earlier this year, and KU in conference play has been good at Allen Fieldhouse. I get it, but this snapshot in time, it has been, KU's been more vulnerable there, and it feels like right now, good luck trying to beat Tech in that arena. There was a bunch of snow trying to keep people out of there, and they still showed up, were insanely loud, and that atmosphere just looked crazy. And Texas Tech is suddenly, they can put 90 on a Kelvin Sampson defense, like on a Kelvin Sampson team, they can score 90. Tech looks great. Tech looks great. I think both of those teams are national title contenders. Arizona, they club somebody again. That's just what they do. Number one team in the country, number one in Ken Palm. Arizona looks awesome. Iowa State, right? Iowa State had a rough week, and you're starting to wonder, okay, are they actually national championship good? TJ Otzelberger has had this tendency to just, look like the best team in the country in like November, December, part of January, and then as you get later in the year, things fall off a bit. Iowa State at least showed some positive signs toward not falling into that trap again. So they had the two losses, right? The back-to-back losses. They got spanked pretty good in Lawrence. And then a 30-point win over UCF. And then they're up by 30 at halftime in Stillwater, 51-21. Oklahoma State whittled that all the way down to 10 with like a minute and a half left. But that was a 30-point game at halftime for Iowa State. The Clones punched back, and I still think it's fair to put them in the national championship contender conversation. And Kansas, look, I'm about to talk about the K-State Jerome Tang problem they have right now. I'm not about to say that, winning at Bramlage Coliseum this year is some sort of incredible feat, but Kansas did win by 24 without Darren Peterson. And the significance of that was the largest win for Kansas at Bramlage Coliseum since 2002. Jim Woolridge's second year in Manhattan. It has typically been, K-State has won consistently since 2008 in that arena, and then it has typically been at least a close game. There have been a lot of knockdown, drag-out games that even Kansas has won. Usually doesn't go that way. Kansas did it without its star player. That's a positive sign. So, if you're keeping track at home, I think you've got 5 legitimate national championship contenders: Arizona, Houston, Texas Tech, BYU, Iowa State, and maybe you throw like Kansas on the fringe of that group if Darren Peterson's healthy. So if you're talking about the SEC in the 2010s, like the late 2000s through the 2010s, and what that league was like every year with like Bama, Georgia, LSU, Florida, these teams that are there every single year. You'd have a Mississippi State or a South Carolina pop up here or there. Either be looking around like, man, it's like 5 or 6 teams that feel like they're borderline national championship contenders here. That's what the Big 12 feels like right now, like SEC football in its heyday. I understand the Big 10's having a great year too. I think the Big 12 has done this more consistently over the years, that I believe in it a bit more right now, but it is fair pushback to say, hey, the Big 10's got a pretty good thing going right now too. I think the Big 10 has like a 1 seed, 2 seeds, and a couple 3 seeds in bracketology. The Big 12's got a 1, a 2, a 3, a 3, and a 4. Kansas is a 5. We'll see if the Jayhawks wind up moving up. Subscribe to the channel, by the way. It's totally free, very quick and easy. Just one click, subscribe to the channel, like the video. Thank you, all of you who do that. But what's interesting is the better comp, as I started thinking about it, I'm like, hey, the easy thing is to say SEC in its heyday. I saw Big 12 Twitter like talking about some of that. Like, this is what the SEC thinks it is in football. But what about the Big 10 right now? It is a little Big 10-esque in what the Big 10 was football-wise, where you got a bunch of national championship contenders, and then, maybe beyond that, the conference isn't quite as deep as you'd like it to be. For instance, like a Baylor's a little bit down right now. The Bears are struggling. K-State is a program that has had some pretty high moments in the last 15 to 20 years in basketball. Obviously, that team, that program is down. TCU's just okay. UCF just okay. You got some teams there where you could sell me on, all right, John, maybe the better comp to make is actually the Big 10 in football this year. But, that's fine. The Big 10 won the national championship. They've won 3 straight. They're consistently producing national championship caliber teams, which I think is exactly what you're seeing out of the Big 12 in basketball right now. Another thing that helps is just, the star power that you have in this league. Like, obviously, you've got a trio of Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsa, and Koa Pete that is as good as anything that you're going to see anywhere in the country. Star freshman leading the way. Throw Kingston Flemings into that mix too, right? Another freshman. Big 12's got a lot of star power, and I think when it's the freshman feed on thing and it gets put under that label too, almost draws more attention to it. That's kind of a fun little niche, or just it's a little more novel, right? When it's all freshmen doing this, that's really the word I'm looking for. You got a bit more of a novelty to it for Big 12 basketball. And then, man, I mean, you get showcase games all the time. This is what happens when you have a bunch of teams like that up at the top of the league. You get a bunch of showcase games like this week when it's BYU's turn in the spotlight. We're going to get Arizona at BYU tomorrow night. Can't wait to watch that. The Marriott Center is going to be on fire, I'm sure, for that. And then you get to watch BYU go to Kansas on Saturday with College Game Day there. We're talking about College Game Day, back-to-back weeks being at the Big 12. This is, it's been a complaint for a while from people about game day. Always at SEC or Big 10 venues. Well, you say Big 12 basketball is SEC football in its heyday or Big 10 football right now. There's your comp. I mean, you're getting College Game Day back-to-back weeks here to start the year. So after a season in which the SEC really did claim the throne last season in basketball, it's been nice to see what the Big 12 is doing this year. Now, got to respond, as is the case with everything. We had the same conversation in football this year. Great year in football to get 3 in the top 15, but what you need to do, what you really have to do, is capitalize in the college football playoff. It is similar here. What you got to do, capitalize in the NCAA tournament. Big 12 would serve itself well to go win a national championship this year. But I think I've made a pretty compelling case here that you've got 5 teams that I think can do that. You've got 5 legitimate, like, more than lottery tickets. Like, these are teams that really do have what it takes to get there. And if you want more on why, to me, BYU specifically is a national title contender, click here. If you're watching live, don't worry about that. If you're watching the clipped version, it is for those folks. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate everybody who is here tonight, including Key for 3 at PG. If you want to submit a super chat as well, click the $ below the chat box, like the video, subscribe to the channel. All that is totally free. Key for 3 at PG says Utah was debounced out of the Marriott Center on Saturday. Yeah. I felt for Utah a bit because, I mean, frankly, twice now I've seen them play a pretty competitive game for most of the game against the Cougars. It was very competitive the entire way through in the game that was played in Salt Lake City, but then you get the return game, and for like 2/3 to 3/4 of that game, I mean, Utah they were pretty competitive. I really liked a lot of what I was seeing from Utah there, but then it was just like, as Alex Jensen said, it's a generational talent. He just takes over. What are you supposed to do? Like, when AJ DeBonsa is hitting 3 of 4 from beyond the arc, I don't know what you're supposed to do to defend the guy at that point. There's just not much you can. So yeah, I think that's pretty fair. That's kind of how it happened. Okay. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, sign up for the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. It's totally free. Almost 6,000 people have, twice a week to your inbox. I appreciate all of you guys who do that. If you want national college football takes, you can find my OFB college football channel. Would appreciate a sub over there as well. You can find the link to that in the description of this video. This is the it's going to be a more self-indulgent portion of the live broadcast. Those of you that have been here for a while, you know I am a K-State guy, so a decent chunk of the audience, K-State fans, and I just, after what happened against Kansas, there is nothing you can do to rally K-State fans, like get drilled by Kansas and embarrassed on your home court. I've been hearing a lot about this. I've been getting a lot of questions and like requests for it, so I figured, hey, it's a bit of a slower time with Big 12 stuff going on right now. I'm going to take some time to address all this right now because it's a conundrum that K-State finds itself in. So please allow me to do this. So K-State has a real Jerome Tang problem on its hands. It looks like K-State is, I would say, doomed to bad basketball for the foreseeable future right now. because they're between a rock and a hard place. And in this video, I'm going to explain what the rock is, what the hard place is, and why it's just not as simple as fire the coach right now, which is what everybody wants when the team is struggling like this. I'll give you what the realistic paths forward look like, and I'll try and find a silver lining. I will try and find a silver lining, okay? So, K-State lost by 24 at home to Kansas. And I know if you are just a random Big 12 fan out there watching this, you'd say, I mean, okay, ho-hum, Kansas is a much better basketball program. Why is that big of a deal? Well, it's the worst loss to Kansas in Manhattan since 2002. That was the second year of Jim Woldridge, a guy who famously coached in a neck brace once, a guy who never made the postseason, did not even make an NIT during his tenure at K-State. Those were different times, and K-State was playing much better Kansas teams when that was going on. So that is staggering. K-State generally is very competitive with Kansas in Manhattan and has won a bunch of the games since 2008. Jerome Tang was 3-0 at home against Kansas before that loss on Saturday. So it is staggering to see that happen, especially when Kansas is playing without Darren Peterson. It's also the way that it happened that was so alarming to K-State fans. It was a 4-point game with 7:52 left. K-State was kind of patchwork, just MacGyvering the thing with duct tape and paper clips and all that, and they were within 4. But you do the math. I mean, Kansas won the game by 24. So you see how that ended, what happened, and you have a situation right now where because so many of these players are just hired guns, basically mercenaries coming in for a bunch of money to play here, there's not a pride about this game. There's not a, we can't let this type of thing happen. And the effort really waned at the end of the game. I mean, Jerome Tang himself called it embarrassing. It was embarrassing. I mean, full stop. It was embarrassing. And what happened at the very end, Nate Johnson not running down a ball in the backcourt that winds up in a Kansas dunk as time's ticking off the clock. Melvin Council, Kansas guard, starts mocking Jerome Tang's wabashing at midcourt as the game's ending, and they're shaking hands. And I got to chuckle a little bit because I can't even really be that mad. They deserve to do that. They clowned you. And I think one of the issues K-State fans have is none of the players really cared. Nobody cared enough to go do anything. You know, I mean, think back to the beginning of last year, K-State had Cam Carter, former player, come in. He kicks your butt and starts mouthing off at the end of the game. I mean, Coleman Hawkins at least got really upset and went over and stomped that out pretty quick. Nobody was doing that. So it's an embarrassing scene. You lose as bad as you have at home to that team in over 20 years. Guys mocking you at midcourt. Nobody cares to do anything. It's just like, yeah, well, whatever. I mean, K-State's paying a lot of money for this. That is a very expensive roster, just like last year's roster was very expensive. And Jerome Tang is now 26-27 in the last 2 seasons. It's going to be his 3rd straight year not making the NCAA tournament. That got Bruce Weber fired. Okay, in this new era of K-State basketball, which to me starts when Bob Huggins was hired back in 2006, that's an unacceptable thing to go 3 years without making the NCAA tournament. And it's not just that. I just mentioned the money. It's all the resources that have been pumped into this and all that's gone along. There's been a lot of drama that's come along with this over the last 3 years too. Like, I think people are a bit exhausted. But, you know, if you're looking for proof on the money, Jeff Goodman came on the 3 Ma podcast last year and said that K-State had a top 5 NIL roster in the country last year, not in the Big 12, in the country. They finished below 500. They didn't make the NCAA tournament. This year, I would say it's more like, at worst, top 15 to top 20 NIL money. Still a pretty expensive roster. They signed PJ Haggerty for like $2.5 million at the very end there, and they look like they could be the worst team in the league. It's gotten worse. You know, last year they put together a stretch where they played really good basketball. Now, one thing I will say about the money, Jerome Tang fundraised a lot of that himself. So I do appreciate that he looked and said, this is a time where it's all about money. I got to go raise as much as I can. And he got off his butt and did it. But boy, the results have not been there. And boy, that feels like a huge waste. This is not Cody Campbell USA. This is not the Matador Club. I mean, K-State has some money, It's not Matador Club money, okay? And so dishing out double-digit $1 million basketball rosters the last 2 years to be a game under 500 and look like the worst team in the league this year, yeah, that's pretty alarming. And the way all this has happened, I mean, there's never been a real concrete formal plan that seems to have been followed this entire time. Jerome Tang last year, as they were struggling and getting 30 balled at home by Houston, said, well, we need to follow the Houston model, which had been like, keep guys around, program guys. And then the entire roster turned over again this offseason, and you brought in a bunch of more highly paid mercenaries that don't have anything really binding them together. There's no cohesion from year to year. And it's just a third straight season of doing that now is very lost and runs the risk of getting much more lost much more quickly because these guys don't have anything tying them all together. A lot of time has been spent by this coaching staff chasing the elite of the elite in high school recruits. They went after AJ DeBonsa. They went after Darren Peterson. I mean, they have spent a lot of time on really highly regarded prospects only to swing and miss. And then the high school players that they have wound up taking have been guys that aren't even getting on the floor, right? I mean, Zay this year, not even getting on the floor. Meanwhile, you get to watch Keaton Wagler, who was in your backyard, went to Shawnee Mission Northwest High School, dropped 46 for Illinois at Purdue. I mean, nobody local was after him. Illinois was a rarity to actually. It was like Illinois, Minnesota at the end. You're not pursuing a guy like that, but you're spending time and resources on Darren Peterson and AJ DeBonsa. And then you sign guys that are stretches to even be at the Division I level when you're getting a high school player in there. So like, what has been the plan? What has been the plan this whole time? Andre Kostic was your big get from Europe, a guy who's mocked in the first round in some places. Hasn't even been able to see the floor. And I understand he's not a great defender, but he came in against Kansas out of total necessity because of injuries, and he stuck 4 threes on Kansas in the span of about 5 minutes of game time because he has that ability. The team needed that ceiling. And for another year, there's a guy in the doghouse that Jerome Tang just won't play, and it stunts the players' growth and it stunts the rotations, and it's just a disaster of a roster situation. I mean, I'm not going to harp on individual guys. I don't know that they deserve that, but some of what you saw on the floor and lineups and players that you saw on the floor against Kansas on Saturday is embarrassing, especially when you consider the amount of money that was spent on it. It is flat out embarrassing. So, man, I will say this, at least as a defense a bit of Tang, and I'm getting to the position K-State's in, because again, I know everybody will say, fire the coach. It's that easy. It's not that easy. It's not that easy right now. One thing I will say in Jerome Tang's defense is I think point many people have made that first year, the Elite Eight run could have in many ways been a bad thing long-term for the program, as crazy as that seems, because I think that got everybody hyped up, excited, perhaps inflated some egos, and it was combined with the timing of everything moving into a purely NIL world. And so Jerome Tang is thinking, well, look what we can do if I get the best players in the country by throwing a ton of money around there. Well, then what is our seal? Of course, like, we can win the national championship instead of sticking to like a committed plan. And what he had learned at Baylor, which was much more along like the Houston model, sprinkle in a few transfers, keep your program guys, develop them. That's how they won at Baylor. Baylor is now struggling in this era. Jerome Tang is now struggling in this era. I think there's something to it's a different deal. And I don't think that either has learned how to really handle it in the right way. And so this is what you get now on the floor. I'm not here to openly advocate for anybody to be fired. And by the way, please do subscribe to the channel if this is your first time here. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. I'm not here to openly advocate for anybody to be fired, but I am here to tell you that this run, 3 straight years without making the NCAA tournament, got the last guy fired. And the last guy won a Big 12 championship and went to an Elite Eight. So similar high end with another year that was a really high. Jerome Tang only has one of those. And then he went 3 straight years missing the NCAA tournament, and he did get fired. So typically that's been the barometer of what would happen. Bruce Weber also had far less monetary support than what has gone into the basketball program for Jerome Tang the last couple of years. But here's why it's not so simple. Jerome Tang's flirted with some jobs in the past. Most recently, after his second season at K-State with Arkansas. Arkansas job was open there. Now I know they hired John Calipari, but I mean I do think like Jerome Tang got an interview with Hunter Yurachek there. And look, to Jerome Tang's credit, much like I'll say with the money that he's raised NIL wise, he got a better deal out of K-State because of it. He leveraged some level of interest. We can debate, I suppose, how much there was, but some level of interest with Arkansas. And a part of that becomes a higher buyout. And so the buyout is $18 million plus, guys. It is over $18 million if that's the route that you want to go, is fire the coach. I said earlier, K-State is not, it's not me coming around like, oh, K-State's poor, whatever. K-State's got some donors that will shell out money, and they have the last 2 years. But it's not the Matador Club, and it's not $500 million of private equity money from Utah, and it's not $300 million from David Booth at Kansas. So an $18 million buyout for a men's basketball coach is pretty untenable. I just don't think that's something that you can do, especially when you got a brand new football coach that needs support. Like, that is a critical hire, and it's a critical time for the football program that fell on hard times last year. He needs all the support he can get. I mean, just my personal feelings here. Give the money to football. $18 million to fire a basketball coach. I don't know that that's an option at all. I don't see how you're doing that. Like, they're pinching pennies, man. I'm not saying this to shame K-State at all. And I will admit, I popped in for one basketball game this year. I was going to go Saturday if snow wouldn't have stopped me, but I was there for the BYU game with a credential. You used to get like a full media meal before a Big 12 game. This time it was just a concession stand voucher. It seems like trying to cut some corners. And I'm all for it. Screw the media. I mean, I am the media, but we don't need, if you can save money and use that to further the athletic programs, do it. But I just say that to make a point. Like, it's not just free flowing money everywhere right now. So $18 million to fire a basketball coach does not seem tenable. Is there any hope? Like, what are your options then? Because then everyone's like, well, what? I can't watch more of this. Like, I'm stuck with this for longer. I mean, we've seen things like Mike Gundy a couple of years ago take some of the money from his deal and send it to NIL efforts and make less money, like renegotiate his deal based on the way things are going. Perhaps, the idea that I've heard discussed more from people is like, well, then what if can you negotiate down the buyout in exchange for more NIL support? Because right now, I think the assumption, appropriately so, would be, yeah, Jerome Tang's not going to have nearly as much money to spend next year. And so is the response, hey, whack that buyout down for us, agree to a new deal, and we'll make sure that you still get a substantial amount of NIL support to have a better chance to go win next year. I understand why people would say that and pitch that. I'm here to tell you, I think that's unlikely. Could be wrong. I feel like that's an unlikely thing that you'll get agreement upon. Maybe there is some mutual parting of ways. Hey, we both know this isn't working. Coach realizes, if I stick around, what if I only have a third of the money I had this past year? Like, I'm just signing up to ruin my reputation even more by having a bad year again next year. Okay, fine. Let's find some number that's more manageable. Again, I think that's pretty unlikely, but it is something I guess I would float out there. I would throw out there. So then what is the most likely scenario to happen? I mean, I think you're staring at Jerome Tang taking about a third the NIL money that he's had the past 2 years, going out there and trying to win with it next year off of I don't know. What do you guys think this team's finishing in the Big 12? They going to win 3 or 4 games? Maybe. They got one right now. You taking a 4-14 Big 12 season. I'll give them 4 wins. 4-14 Big 12 season, back-to-back missing the tournament, back-to-back high level, high profile players going there and having very underwhelming, disappointing seasons. And now you don't have a lot of money to spend anyway. Sure doesn't sound like a great recipe. Here's my one silver lining for you guys. Okay. I promised you a silver lining. My one silver lining would be maybe taking away some of the high level NIL money can be a blessing in disguise. Maybe it gets you back down to like, we just need to find guys that are a fit, what the fit is for. I don't entirely know, because I don't know that I can tell you like what a Jerome Tang system is 3+ years in at K-State. I don't really know what exactly that looks like, but maybe there's better fit guys who will play more together instead of just being distracted by bright, shiny objects, which it feels like the staff really has been. Maybe that's the silver lining and things will come together a little bit better next year because of it. I'd also be very curious what the staff looks like next year. I mean, that's a point that I didn't even hit. This was like the staff retooling year, right? You went out and got Matthew Driscoll, who had been a head coach, and I was really excited for that. And it seemed like the early returns on the offense with him were good, but it's fallen apart in Big 12 play. This was the coach shakeup year. Tang got a couple of his guys, a couple of his old guys, his old Baylor buddies to come in, and it still looks the same. Uric Malachi left. He brought those guys in. Not looks the same. It looks worse. So I don't know, man. I don't have a whole lot of like hope for you other than to say the silver lining I mentioned, maybe less NIL money would be a welcome thing to focus everybody in instead of getting too distracted. And I can just tell you, in life, most of the time it's never as bad as it looks, and it's never as good as it looks or feels or whatever. So in that case, this would be one of those good times. Maybe it's not quite as bad as it looks or feels or whatever. K-State does have a brand new football coach after Chris Kleiman suddenly retired. Click here to find out what happened that made Chris Kleiman step away. That's for the folks watching the clip version. If you're watching live, don't worry about it. But I appreciate you all being here. I think that is going to just about wrap it up. We've got no more super chats. If you have anything, now is definitely the time. Click the $ below the chat box if you would like to get one of those in very, very quickly here before I depart. But just a couple housekeeping reminders, guys. Again, subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. It's ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com. To get signed up for that, like the video, subscribe to the channel. All that stuff is totally free. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you'd like to leave me a super chat there if you weren't able to watch live, and I'll kick off the next show with it. Oh, and OFB College Football. You can click the link in the description to the OFB College Football channel if you would like to get some national takes from me in college football. Bracket Cat. Thanks, John. I don't feel any better. Well, I tried, my friend. Bracket Cat, I tried. I gave you, was it cathartic at least, Bracket Cat? I hope it was at least cathartic. Maybe that was more of the angle I should have presented that as instead of making you feel better. Anyway, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here. Kim, thank you. Take care, everybody. I hope you have a great start to your week. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Take care, and I will talk to you all soon.